I was telling you that Shivandu had kind of put very special effort in the composition of part 1, possibly for various reasons. One of the reasons which he would give is he was trying to find out the kind of expression that should come in Savitri. And then he was casting and recasting his earlier drafts till he was satisfied. The very first canto, the Symbol Dawn, he had written at least 25 times. Again and again and again and again, 25 times, till he was absolutely satisfied. And then once the style, the presentation, the format, everything was kind of frozen, fixed, he got it, that inspiration, then he started rolling out other things, you see. So we can say that the definitive form of part 1 must have taken about 4 or 5 years, from 41 to 45 roughly, when he was casting and recasting, rewriting many of his drafts. And after 45, then he switched on to part 2 and part 3 afterwards. Although in small snippets, small portions here and there, you also have his notings of the later parts of Savitri also, you see, here and there. So once the style was frozen, the theme was frozen, the contents were frozen, then it became sort of easy to write other cantos, so to say, you see. Now, because Shivandu had given very special attention to drafting this canto, this part, we can see the difference between the style of part 1 and the style of what we had done, part 2 and part 3. Part 2 and part 3 is mostly, I would say 80%, is by dictation. Whereas 80% of part 1 is in the form of a draft in his own handwriting, in his own hand. So he would kind of concentrate on what he is doing. While dictating, you can't do that sort of a thing. So there is a difference between the two halves of Savitri, the first half and the other half, you see. Perhaps it was necessary also, see, there is so much of density, condensation, packed material in part 1 that you really start wondering how this could have happened at all, you see. Because packing, so to say. Whereas in part 2 and part 3, the poetry was flowing, streaming out, constantly moving out, you see. So there is a difference between these two styles also, styles of these two halves of Savitri, you see. Part 1 is concerned basically with Ashwapati, the king's yoga and mission. Part 2 is devoted, part 2 and part 3, the second half is devoted essentially to Savitri. So in a way, if you want, you can say that if I go only to part 1 and call it an Ashwapati's epic, that can stand by itself. These 10,000, 12,000 lines of part 1, they themselves can form an independent epic. The yoga of Ashwapati is ascension and reaching the Divine Mother and praying to her to take a mortal birth. So that itself could be a sufficient theme for an epic, part the first half. The second half, you can call the work on mission of Savitri. That also could stand by itself as an independent epic, part 2. In fact, part 2, second half is running more or less along the lines of the traditional story as we have in the Mahabharata, about 250 shlokas. the traditional story as we have in the Mahabharata. Whereas part 1, which is there in Mahabharata only in few shlokas, maybe around 30, 40, 50 slokas, very small portion. That 30, 40, 50 slokas got expanded to 12,000 lines in Savitri. What was simply hinted in the Mahabharata that Ashwapati did tapasya for 18 years. That is all that is stated in the original story. He did tapasya for 18 years, praying to the divine Savitri to grant him a boon. That is all we have got in about 30, 40 slokas. Now that 30, 40 slokas got expanded into full part 1 of Savitri. The rest in the Mahabharata is the narrative, how Savitri grows up, how she is now ready to get married, how she finds Satyavan, how they meet, etc., etc. All those things follow there. So the story part is part 2 and part 3. The tapasya part is in part 1 of Savitri, of Ashwapati. Now, of course, in the second half, we have also seen that there is a very long book, book 7, the book of yoga, Savitri's yoga. Now, that book of yoga is not there really at all in the original Mahabharata story. Savitri has fully presented Savitri's yoga in those cantos, 7 cantos of book 7. You see. Now, that does not mean that Savitri was not doing yoga in the Mahabharata story. Although it is not elaborated, it is not given, it is not explicitly spelled out, it does not mean that it is not there. He simply drops a hint. Vyasa, the author of Mahabharata, simply drops a hint. And she was an adept in the yoga of meditation. He simply says that how she did, what she did, how all those details he has not given there at all. Now that she was an adept in the yoga of meditation, Jnana Yoga Parayana, as he says, that phrase has got expanded into 7 cantos of Savitri, Savitri, you see, that phrase. So that way there are similarities between these two, and at the same time elaborations of a different kind. My point is basically that in part 1, book 1, book 2, book 3 of Savitri, we have given to special, so to say, physical attention to every line and every word. He was writing down himself with his own pen on a piece of paper, all those things you see, not dictating that way, you see. And therefore there is a condensation, there is a density, there is a kind of a different power in part 1, which is not, so to say, present in the other half. It is a power of a different type in the other half. The lyrical, the swift, the moving, the ananda, that is there in the second half. But here, the classical density is what you see in this first half. Classical density. You see is the spiritual lyricism in the second half. So you have got the romantic, traditional romantic, and the classical in in one Savitri itself. Now we are not going in a sequence. Take book 1, book 2, book 3. We have done from book 4 onward to book 12. Now we are going first. We are going to do first book 3, and then we will do book 1, and then last we will do book 2. Yeah, if our patience does not get exhausted. Yeah. Book 3, the book of the Divine Mother. Again, the original story of the Mahabharata is very brief because the whole of part 1 is very brief. As I said, 30, 40 slokas in Savitri, and what is done there in the Mahabharata story is Ashwapati is issueless. He wants to have a son, for the continuity of the dharmic conduct of his kingdom and all that, because that is how the merit of good conduct is passed on from generation to generation. And he was issueless, and therefore he goes and sits down for tapasya for 18 years and starts doing yajna of Savitri for 18 years. At the end of 18 years, Savitri is pleased with him, and then she grants a boon, etc., etc. That is what we have got. Now, that is the only gist of it. Now, there, she does tapasya for 18 years, does yajna for 18 years, all that yajna for 18 years, and she coming out of the yajna fire and granting him the boon is what we have in book 3 of here.